So, Rebecca, over to you.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Oh, frog, brilliant, good start. So hello everybody, thank you very much for coming today. My name is Rebecca Reid. I am the Head of Insight and Development at the Housing Ombudsman, and there's a jolly good chance that at least most of you have probably seen my face on a various webinar at some point in the last 3 years. I can see a wry smile, so there we go. So my team do the Insight reports, we also do the Spotlight reports, we do the paragraph 49 and the special reports into individual landlords as well, and we're generally about taking the body of information and intelligence from the complaints that we handle, squeezing it for learning, and then writing that into products that we then share with the sector so that everyone gets the benefit. And the London Insight report is no exception. Before I start, I will say this is an insight report into the region of London. It is not a report into London councils. It covers both types, all the housing providers in the London region. And when we make commentary about each of the boroughs, we are talking about the postcodes that feature in the local authority areas. We are not necessarily talking about the local authority landlords. It's really important to stress that one, because this is not a report on London councils. It is a report on London social housing. So I just want to make that point really, really clear. So for a bit of context about London itself first, you can't really do an insight report into London social housing and the complaints that we get from there without recognising that London housing is different to the rest of the country. So there is a much higher proportion in London of people who are social renters compared to the rest of England. You can see that statistic, it's 21%, so that's 1 in 5 of London households is a social rental household. It's 16% in the rest of England, so that's only 1 in 6 essentially for the whole rest of England. And the proportion of local authority rental relative to housing authority rental within that is also different as well. So for London households, 11% are housing association renters, 10% makes up 21 in total. I checked my maths, it does work. 10% of those are local authority rentals. That's 16% for the rest of England, 10% are housing associations, so similar to London, but it's only 6% are local authority renters. So again, you're already seeing there is a difference between London and the rest of the country on just the type of landlord and the type of social rental alone when you also factor in the proportion. In addition to that, the type of house that people live in is also very different in London. So it is twice the rate of anywhere else in the country that is flats, apartments or maisonettes. So not self-contained, close proximity to neighbours, people living above you, people living below you, etc. That is 22% in Southeast, but it's over half in London. So again, it's double anywhere else in the rest of the country as well. And 3 out of the 4 social rental homes, which again are a higher proportion in London, 3 out of 4 of those are flats, apartments or maisonettes. So that half of London homes includes owner occupied, it includes private rental, includes everything, but 3 out of 4 social rental homes in London are flats, apartments or maisonettes. So again, totally different context to the rest of the UK, England as well. London also has more older homes, and you have to excuse the pithiness. They're in good condition, they're in better condition, except when they're really not. So council tax data, 21% of London homes were built before 1900. So again, 1 in 5 homes in London is well old. The highest proportion of any region and compared to 15% across England as a whole. So it's all beautiful, lovely, old property. Generally speaking, local authorities with higher proportions of old properties, buildings built before the 1919, so before the end of the First World War, tend to have a higher proportion of occupied dwellings that fail the decent home standards. So again, in general, if it's an old building, it should be a higher proportion that fail the decent home standards, but not in London. In 2020, the proportion of non-decent old, I'm going to call them old, pre-1919 built homes was 17% in London, and it was up at 44% in the East Midlands. So they have lots and lots of old property, and actually, generally speaking, it is in better condition. Non-decency amongst pre-19 built homes is generally lower in London and the South East. So older, more of it, but better maintained. London also has a lower proportion of non-decent homes built between 1919 and 1944, the interwar period, than in most other regions. It's 9% and it's 19 to 28% in the other regions. I know I'm bamboozling with statistics. I promise you that this is all written out, beautifully explained in the report as well. Please do read it. But it is the stats that make this quite stark. However, despite them all being, there's a lot of old, and generally speaking, they're also in better condition, London's social rented homes are more likely to contain hazards than the English average. So that's 6.2% in London, and it's only 5.5% across the entirety of England as well. So hence the rather pithy line, there's more old properties, they're generally in better condition, except when they're really, really not. Simple, really. So key statistics, as Victoria alluded to at the beginning of this, one of the key reasons we did this investigation is that 47%, that's nearly half of our cases, come from London postcodes and people who live in London. And that's been the case for the last 3 years. This is not anomalous this year. It's always sat around just under 50% for the last 3 years. However, only 1 in 6 homes are of social housing that we cover are in London. So they are coming into us at 3 times the ratio that you would expect them to be coming into us if everybody complained equally across the country, which we know doesn't happen, but even so, 3 times as high is noticeable. 54 of the 101 fire safety complaints we dealt with last year, so that's over half, came from London alone. 12 of the 31 structural safety, and this is perhaps not a particularly big surprise when you consider the number of high-rise buildings there are in London, but 12 out of the 31 and 12 out of the 17 district heating complaints, because district heating is a particular factor within London houses that doesn't really happen anywhere else in the rest of the country. So our 2021 Spotlight report on cladding said poor communication was one of the key drivers of dissatisfaction. This is in relation to the fire safety, the structural safety aspects of the complaints, and often led to detriment to the resident. You've got the cost of living crisis, and the insecurity around energy prices has also impacted district heating as a particular methodology of complaints. And again, as I said, there's a lot more district heating, communal heating setups in London compared to the rest of the country. So that needs to be considered as well, and I will flag that we have done a particular Spotlight report on heating, hot water and energy as well. That is well worth the read. You'll see the follow-up reading, a slide at the end of this is full because there's lots to read. 56% of all the shared ownership and leaseholder complaints that this organisation dealt with last year also came from London. And again, that is slightly proportionate to the fact that there is more shared ownership and leasehold within London, but even so, that's over half of all shared ownership and leasehold properties that we cover, all that came from London. And over 2/3 of the complaint handling failure orders that we issued last year came from the London region. So there is a lot of work being generated by the London region and the London homes that we cover. Maladministrations rates within the London boroughs, and again I will stress here we are talking about London boroughs, we're talking about postcodes, we're not talking about council landlords. Maladministration rates varied drastically depending on which borough within London you lived in. So they range from 87.2% maladministration rate if you lived in Richmond upon Thames, to only 58.5, which is still above 50%, but actually at the moment our national average is 70 odd, so 58.5 is good. 58.5% for people who lived in Barnet. There were only 2 findings made for the City of London in 2023-24, which is why we haven't included them in that range, but both of those were maladministration rates. So if we included City of London in our scale, it would be 100% for City of London, but there were only 2 people. So we don't include that as a statistically significant figure. So 87.2 for Richmond through to 58.5 for Barnet. And that lovely, gorgeous, pretty coloured map that you can see in front of you is a colour-coded representation of the difference in maladministration rates across the capital. Overall, though, you are looking at a 9.3% severe maladministration rate. So that's of all our findings, apart from outside jurisdiction withdrawn, 9.3% of those were severe maladministration. It's only 7.4% for the rest of England. And our maladministration rate overall is 77% for London, and it's only 68.5% for the rest of England. So again, more maladministration is happening in London, even if you average out across the region, the borough differences between the various areas in London. When you break that down by housing type, and by size and by type, generally speaking, and you'll see that from the slide, London has the highest maladministration rate for every way you slice it, apart from small housing providers. And the only landlords that beat those are small landlords in the northwest of England. They are higher than 75%. But it is the highest maladministration rate for housing associations. It's the highest maladministration rate for local authorities. It's the highest whether your housing provider is big. It's the highest whether your housing provider is medium, and it's the second highest if they're small as well. So it's worth saying that for this coming annual complaints review, we're going to subdivide the size thing down a little bit more, because we found that 3 bands tends to push a lot of together, so that we're going to nuance that a bit more. But it's still very stark that London is broadly across the board the highest maladministration rates, no matter how you slice your different types of landlords. The Northwest rate as well, just for context, is 83%, so a bit higher than 75. Yeah, so that's the London stats. When you look at the stats that speak to the quality of the housing, we made 2,000 property condition findings last year for London-based homes. And again, London has the highest maladministration rate for property condition. It has the highest maladministration rate for health and safety. And we factor health and safety as including fire safety, building safety, structural safety, gas checks, everything to do with basically keeping people safe in their homes comes underneath this particular category. And again, the highest maladministration rate for the handling of antisocial behaviour or other associated behaviours by the landlords as well. So paints a fairly stark picture across the board, whether it's by quality or by type of landlord as well. So that is a very, very quick summary of the stats and the findings we found in the cases. The key learning to take from our report is that a positive complaints culture starts from the top. So it's really crucial, and you'll see this in all the paragraph 49 reports that I will cite in the next slide, that the leadership and governance need to be seen to support the complaints function, including promoting internal cooperation and engagement with the complaints processes, because that is how you find the intelligence, the insight that you then use strategically. And I've literally just jumped to the 5th slide, which is really the 5th bullet point, which was terribly clever of me. But a positive complaints culture led from the top, who sees the importance of complaints and what intelligence that can give for how service provision can be improved, is absolutely vital as well. We also acknowledge that some issues for landlords are outside its control. We've talked about the age of some of the buildings that are in London. We've talked about some of the realities of district heating, etc., 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 how complicated these things can be. And issues for landlords can be outside their control to fully rectify, but don't lose sight of the person in the middle of all of this while you're trying to sort the issue out. The landlord can take to mitigate the impact on the resident. And it's really important that a landlord doesn't lose sight of the resident at the centre of a protracted issue, doesn't blame them for the situation. Our spotlight reports talk about using words like lifestyle, blame language, suggesting it's the resident's fault that something's occurring. It's never going to be 100% anyone's fault that something is happening. And there's a continuous assessment of whether the remedial actions that have been taken are still the right ones to do, or is now the time to step it up? Is now the time to take a different track? Was that the appropriate thing for then, but it's not now? Do we now need to consider a decant? So that constant dynamic evaluation of the situation for whether this is still the right solution for the individual concerned at the heart of this. So don't lose sight of the person. We do expect landlords to act on behalf of their residents when they're dealing with a quality issue that requires responses from other organisations and agencies. We have put reports out there about managing agents, third parties, and how that can complicate the situation as well. It's really important that throughout all of that, landlords act as advocates for their residents in being proactive and robust in making certain that they get the resolution for the resident that is needed. Good record keeping equals good customer service. For any of you who've been subjected to talks from me before, you'll know I bang on about data and Kim, and that it is a silver bullet if you let it be. You know, if you have the data, you can use it. And if you have the data, you can give good customer service. It's founded on the demonstrating that the resident's experience is important to the landlord. They bothered to take notes of what's been said before. They ensure that details are taken and recorded appropriately so that residents feel listened to. The right solutions found to resolve the issue swiftly. So you use the data to then find the right answer, and the communication to the resident is courteous, but also very important, accurate as well. There is nothing that convinces people more that you're not being listened to or you're not being heard if what is then repeated back to you for what the people understand is completely not what you just said. So it's same principle. Good record keeping equals good customer service. Good complaint handling does recover trust. So they've had a bad experience with their service provision, or they feel they've had a bad experience with their service provision. They've made a complaint. This is an opportunity for a landlord to regain the residents' trust after they've had a bad experience. It's far more than just ascertaining what that service failure was and fixing it. It's much more about good complaint handling, rebuilding that relationship between the resident and the landlord. You want, in an ideal situation, they've had a bad experience, they come to landlord with it, they feel listened to, they feel heard, and at the end of it, they're like, I trust that the next time something bad happens, I can come to my landlord and they will sort it out for me. It's really important. And then finally, all that data and all that information and all of that complaints insight can be used strategically to be proactive in trying to improve the service so that people don't experience it over and over and over again. And again, this is a common theme in our special reports around London area work that we've done. Insight and intelligence from complaints, if used strategically by landlords and root cause analysis is done of complaints to say, do you know what, this keeps happening, or this situation keeps going on. Why is that? Be curious, and that can identify risks, and it can do horizon scanning. There's a lot of conversations going on in a lot of places about how, if you record the data about complaints from particular blocks, particular addresses, you can start to build a profile of the area that allows you to start to predict where the next hotspots for ASB will be, or for damp and mold, or everyone's going to need their roofs repairing in the next 2 years because the ones that we fixed the 2 years before that on this particular estate, they've all started to fail. So these are going to be the next ones that are scheduled. All of that is intelligence and information that can be used to then strategically plan to improve the service. So that's the key learning from the insight reports. I will say now, we have a lot of further reading that if you want to do it, please do want to do it, obviously, but hopefully you've all read all of these already. But we've done spotlight reports on 6 topics that feature in this London Insight report. And we have got, she says, counting the bullet points, 8 special reports on landlords who are either London councils or who operate with a large quantity of London stock as well in their portfolio. So everything that we have said in the London Insight report is part either from the stats that we have from our own cases, from the insight from our own cases, or is a distillation of what we have said in these products, these reports. So please do feel free to go and read them. And I will end on a contact us page because that is the law.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much. That's a really interesting presentation. I love that you really focused on in your wrap up there about how that good complaint handling can really restore the faith and rebuild that trust in the landlord resident relationship. I think that's a really key point as well. I know we've got some podcasts actually on our Centre for Learning where we've talked through some cases where that trust has been rebuilt, and you can see the impact of the situation on the resident. So thank you very much, Rebecca. We haven't got any questions in the chat just yet, but for anybody who would like to raise their hand virtually, because we can't see all of you, obviously, because not everybody's got the cameras on. If you want to raise your hand. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, you're flying, you're back now.
Lovely. Yeah, if you want to raise your hand to ask Rebecca a question, now's your time to do so, or you can pop them in the meeting chat. Whilst you're just having a think about those and see if we've got any that are going to come through. We've got an evaluation form for the session today. I'll put the link in the chat for that. We'd really appreciate your feedback on the session today and how useful you found it. We've also got some other webinars coming up over the next few months. The next one is with L&Q about their special investigation. That's on the 25th of September. And we've got another one with Taurus as well on the 8th of October about their severe maladministration. So you can find those on our Learning Hub. They are under the webinar section. So have a look at those if you fancy coming along to another one. So has anybody got a question? Would you like to raise your hands or pop it in the chat? Stunned silence, Rebecca. Blown everybody away.
Okay. I think that might be a deafening no.
I think that is a definite no. In that case, then I'll stop recording, and thank you very much for your time today, Rebecca, and for everybody that has joined us. Or if you do think of something afterwards and you want to get in touch, the details are on the screen there. info@housing-ombudsman.org.uk. Drop us a line, and look forward to seeing you at future sessions. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.